Here live. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sustainable Design Masterclass. This is, I think, the 43rd webinar we've done. This is awesome. This is a quick brief. Make sure you turn off all those dang social media distractions, even though they're super useful in disaster situations. You're in a learning situation, so turn off your Instagram, turn off your Facebook, throw your phone in the trash, compost your distractions, because you want to learn with Erik. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us again on Sustainable Design Masterclass. I'm going to let Neil introduce our amazing special guest, Erik Ohlsen.
Welcome, everybody. Good to have a bunch of you back. Erik and I have been friends for 3 years now, I think. It might be 4. And ever since we met, we've been in touch. We write each other, not frequently, but probably every now and then, and keep track of each other. He's somebody that I found that I could trust very quickly, and he's someone who's got some amazing experience and who has bootstrapped a company from nothing to doing 7 figures a year. And I think aside from the actual design aspect of landscaping, there's a whole nother side to this that I was not very aware of before I had talked with Erik about it, and it's the whole managing a client and managing the process and filtering through people and making sure that you get paid and making sure that your employees get paid. There's this whole other side that you don't really think about. That's the whole process of running a business and making sure that everyone's eating. And that's just as important, if not more so, as the actual, designing so that the ecology functions again and figuring out, the software and stuff like this. And so Erik's experience, I think, is quite singular, both in his journey and in the approach that he takes. It's completely admirable. It's something I respect a great deal, and so I'm really happy to have him on. Erik, thank you so much for coming on to Sustainable Design Masterclass, and I'm going to give it to you now.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that great introduction, and thanks so much for inviting me here to talk to your amazing student body. I'm going to jump into the slides here and start our way through this little journey that we have today. It's such an honor to be here, and Neil, I just have to reflect back all that you said about our connection. Feel the same way. It's amazing that we've been able to build this international network of professionals in all these different fields, whether it's regenerative agriculture or it's ecological landscaping. The more that we connect and learn from each other, we really build each other up, and really we're part of a cutting-edge global movement now. Everybody here is part of this movement as well, which is how do we quickly and effectively regenerate our landscapes, and also how do we do that in a way where we're taking care of people. And that's really what this piece I want to share with you is all about starting a permaculture contracting career. As Neil said, it's not just about design, but it's about the social economic infrastructure, the pattern level that we implement to ensure that we have businesses and organizations and projects that can actually be sustained, not just from a theoretical point of view. How do we go from vision? We all have so much great vision about what's possible, but then when you actually implement that, that's where all the detail is at. That's often where we end up having some failure. So so let's jump into it. My slides aren't working here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so jumping into today's agenda. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about where I came from. So a little bit of my story, which is really about using permaculture to make an impact, and talk a little bit about my activist journey and the burnout that accompanies it. And then we're going to talk about a business solution to regenerate the planet. Super exciting stuff. And then we'll get into running a 7-figure contracting company. And then finally, I'll talk about a step-by-step system to develop your own regenerative career. Because in the end, the ultimate goal, my ultimate goal, is that we take over the economy, that regenerative agriculturists and ecological designers and permaculturists, and that we take over the economy in such a way that we've actually transitioned our economic system from an extractive, degenerative system to one that's actually repairing the planet and taking care of people. And we can do this. We have the proven blueprint to do that. So first off, I want you to know what my frame is. And my frame is about, you know, making an impact. And ever since I was a young activist, I got into permaculture when I was 19 years old. So this has been my entire adult life doing this work. And what really turned me on was, first, as I started to learn and understand some of the perils that are happening around the planet, whether it's deforestation or desertification or genetically engineered seed or whatever it might be, that the more I started to learn about those issues, the more I was like turned on to do something. And when I was 19, I got into permaculture, and I devoted my life to this practice, and I still devote my life to implementing permaculture on every scale possible. But for me, it's always about what is the greatest possible impact that I can make with my work. And so it started out, you know, here I am on the left-hand side here, young Erik, and our mission was to build a community garden movement in our community. And we started an organization. It was called Planting Earth Activation. And there was maybe about 20 of us, you know, all the way from 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. So a whole youth movement. And what we did was we took over people's landscapes. You know, we got approval, of course, and we started turning lawns rapidly into permaculture gardens with a focus on saving seed. And we would take over neighborhoods, actually, and have whole block parties in a neighborhood. We might do 8 to 10 gardens in a single weekend with about 60 volunteers and donated materials, and neighbors would come out and help each other. And many times they'd never even met each other before. And I kind of think of it as an idea before its time, because back then, this was before social media and all the ways that we have to communicate with each other now. And we were some pretty broke activists, you know, volunteering all of our time away, more than 40 hours a week of volunteerism for a couple of years there, giving gardens away to other people. And it was very hard to get traction. It was hard to get noticed for the work we were doing because, you know, it was a small community and it's hard to get that word out. Now we hear about these things all over the planet. There's Food Not Lawns, there's perma blitzes, there's gratitude gardens, there's victory gardens, there's, you know, whole sets of movements that are really the same kind of thing that we did, you know, way back when. But it was the beginning for me of permaculture and activism and what I was devoting my life and soul to. But then it quickly moved into another level. So I went from planting these community seed gardens to really traveling the world as a global justice activist, following the World Trade Organization, following the G8, a lot of these big meta institutions that decide a global agenda for things like agriculture and water and you know, privatization of resources and labor. And so I spent a few years traveling around and engaging in mass civil disobedience, mass mobilizations. And I learned a lot in that process. And every time we would go into one of these mobilizations, we would set up permaculture gardens. And it's kind of like my goal with the organization that I started back then. It's called the Green Block. My goal was we're going to put a spotlight on solutions in the middle of these mobilizations. You know, here we are saying no to the WTO or whatnot, but what are we saying yes to? And so we started setting up these ecological base camps for activists, and people were coming from all over the world for these base camps. And we set up gray water systems and solar ovens and rain catchment systems and all kinds of ecological infrastructure. And it was a powerful time. It was very intense as well. It was, you know, a lot of work, you know, you're not getting paid, a lot of travel, and a lot of fear of what's going to happen. You know, we're like in a battle state when we're at these mobilizations. And what happened for me in that process would change my life forever. And ultimately, we had a lot of victories and we had a lot of struggles. And this picture right here is a picture that was in the San Francisco Chronicle when the biotech industry had a meeting in San Francisco. And we set up this huge mobilization that we called Reclaim the Commons to try to shut the meeting down and to link a whole bunch of issues like war and the housing crisis and privatization of seeds and biotech, and we were trying to do all this linking, and it ended up being a little too much. And what happened at the end of that action, I believe this was 2004, was that I ended up getting arrested one morning, and I spent about, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 hours in jail. And then I got released, and the next day we were planting gardens throughout the city of San Francisco as our final day of action. This was like on the 7th day. And we hadn't been successful, in my opinion, in really making any dent in the conference or the media war or any of the stuff that we were trying to do. Like, I didn't feel like we were really accomplishing much. And then it was the day that we were planting gardens in San Francisco. And that day felt like this is where all the victory lies. It lies in the hands-on work that we're doing in these communities, taking over sidewalk medians and planting fruit trees and building gardens in the urban environment. And so after that action, something kind of intense happened to me, and I basically went into a crisis mode. I don't know if any of you have ever had like a full-on burnout before, but it was pretty intense. I spent about 4 days in my room, like basically in my bed, just emotional and paralyzed, because here I had put all this energy, blood, sweat, and tears for months and months and months on end. It didn't feel effective to me. We had some victories over those years, and I definitely see the role of social movements, not downing social movements at all. They have a powerful role to play. But for me, in terms of the work I wanted to do to put a spotlight on solutions, that didn't seem like a good platform. And I got really sick and actually went into like a whole year of physical ailments, and I didn't even know what was going on. And in that process, a lot of crazy stuff happened to me. So I had the crash and burn, and my identity was wrapped up in my activism. What I thought my worth in the world was wrapped up in this identity, and I was grieving essentially the fact that I couldn't keep doing that because I was physically unable to go to meetings and travel. I was kind of like homebound for like a year after this burnout happened. And this chronic illness sort of like took over and is still with me today. So in that process, I had to do something, because remember that first slide I showed you, like, I'm about impact. Like, I need to have an impact. That's what feeds my soul. That's what gets me up in the morning. And I'm not having an impact if I'm sitting around, sick, being the victim and not doing the work that I thought I was meant to do. So a transformation occurred, because at that point in my life, I didn't have any real kind of income, right? I wasn't able to really provide for what would be a growing family. I was just getting married and wanted to start a family. And all the money I had came from fundraising as an activist to do that activist work. And now that that was dried up, what am I going to do? And I had to change my relationship to money. And this is one of those moments when we see it in ecosystems as well, that you have these crises moments, these disturbances. And sometimes they can be catastrophic, but often they are actually creating conditions for the next change to occur. Like right now, just 10 miles from me, we just had the biggest firestorm in California's history, and it was a very destructive fire. And I went into a couple of the burn zones last week, and the areas where the fire was cooler, where it wasn't as destructive, it was actually a regenerative situation. And I see the bunch grasses that are going to be growing back, and all the annuals have been burned off, and there's actually a beautiful regeneration that's blooming out of the fire amidst all the destruction. And so for me, that was what was happening for me. I had a huge catastrophic fire in my activist burnout. Now what am I going to do? Well, one thing that I knew I had to do was that I had to find the balance between what my purpose is, like the work I want to do in the world, with taking care of myself. And that if I wasn't able to balance those two things, I would just be totally lost, and my my sickness would consume me. So what am I going to do? Here I am, I'm in my early 20s, I have no income, I'm sick, I'm burnt out, but I want to do something. What do I do? And not only what do I do to make that shift, but how can I sustain it now? Because now I knew that that activist model for me wasn't something I could sustain, because it was a recipe for burnout and crisis. So what can we do where I can have an impact, where that impact can last for generations, and at the same time I can actually take care of myself, you know, can actually have that self-care. And enter a solution to regenerate the planet, which was my first business. So my first business, Permaculture Artisans, was born out of that moment when I realized that I have skills as a permaculture designer. I had built hundreds of gardens up to that point. I was living in a rural community with a culture of people that want to steward the land in a regenerative way. And so I started my first business, Permaculture Artisans, and you know, it changed my life forever, because one thing that I realized was the ultimate power of having a business that actually can restore the land, like a business that can build soil, a business that can catch and infiltrate water, a business that can plant orchards and food forests and restore watersheds and manage forest ecosystems in a sustainable way. And this kind of started to open me up to something that I had never really considered before, which was that, you know, that business can play this role. Because I was pretty anti-business as an activist. It's just kind of like a fundamental part of the culture is to be anti-business. So I never really had this thought that, you know, business could be a positive force. So it was a pretty intense, like, internal transformation that had to occur, and this realization that actually a business can be a restorative power. And as I started my business, and I'm going to get into some of the nitty-gritty details of my first project in just a minute. So, you know, we're still at pattern level, but we're going to get into details here in a minute. So one thing that came up quickly was that there was a social implication to running a business, because as you start to grow your business, you have the possibility of hiring people. And as I'm hiring people into my company, now all of a sudden I'm an employer. You know, I'm no longer that just the guy who's out there in the field doing the design work and the installation. Now I'm actually managing people, and I'm providing an income for them. And what I started to realize was something that would really change my view forever. And that was that, you know, many people in the world, people who are in poverty situations even, people throughout this country, the United States, throughout the world, most of us are struggling to just make ends meet, right? We're doing our work in the world for money so that you can pay for your rent, for health insurance, for putting food on the table, to send your kid to school, you know, to put clothes on your family's back, like basic things that, since we're all wrapped up in this economic system, these are just basic things that most everybody in the world needs and works towards providing for themselves and their families. And so what if we actually create businesses that give folks what they need so they can not only just make ends meet, but actually have a living wage, right? Like have a right livelihood. But then the work that they did every single day to make their income was the active work to repair the planet, the active work to build soil and catch water and grow food. And, you know, when that all came together for me in the process of my business, I was totally inspired. And what I realized is that we have this opportunity right now to bring together the regeneration of the planet with the economy. And so over the past 15 years, I've created a whole series of different businesses. And this isn't even all the businesses that I've created here, but I have a publishing company and an education company and a new online endeavor, and I've written some books and published some books, and it's all within the frame of creating an economic system that heals the land and heals people. And it's been amazing to see the success and to see people draw into this, because we're talking about creating careers to restore the planet. So, you know, that's like some pattern level stuff. Now I want to get into some of the details about what happened when I started my business, some of the lessons I learned, and some of the mistakes that I made. How are we doing, everybody? We got people can hear and see everything? Seems good.
Yeah, looks like.
All right, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, great. Thanks. So out of all of that, you know, activist burnout and transformation, a professional landscaper was born. That was me. And this is a picture of my very first project with Permaculture Artisans, which this is about a 1 acre, it was a sloping, eroding hillside. And when we got onto this site, the client was really concerned about the soil washing down to the house. Actually, right to the right over here is where the house is. So you got all this water runoff coming off this eroding slope, and it's a pretty erosive soil, our Gold Ridge loam soil out here, and it was washing right towards the house. And so she wanted to create a market garden with this project, and I just happened to live a mile away, and I took this project on. Oh, let's see here. Here we go. So here are some of the successes that happened in my very first project. And if you're someone who is considering stepping into becoming a professional ecological landscaper or ecological designer or consultant, because there's a lot of different variety in there in terms of when we say a professional landscaper, there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing that. If you're interested in that, then this is the kind of thing that can happen for you. So the first thing was that, you know, I was able to design and install a 2 acre market garden. It was lavender and citrus were our 2 market crops, and still to this day, those systems are. This is 12 or more years ago. Those systems are still there, producing and those products are being sold. For the first time in my life, I was actually able to hire people, and so I was able to hire my friends, and this was like a totally new experience because, you know, as an activist, you're just volunteering almost all the time. And then hopefully you'll be able to fundraise some money here or there to, to pay for your basic needs. And I was living, with very low income at the time. And this whole thing of like being able to hire people was very new to me. And it really shifted my frame about, the role business can play in our world, in our social structure. So I was able to hire my friends, which is really cool. And for the first time in my life, I was making myself a living. I mean, I'd had jobs before, of course, before I'd gotten into permaculture and been an activist. I mean, I was a pizza delivery man, and I was a spa attendant, and, all the random jobs that one might have in their youth. But I had never made a living doing those things. I was just supplemental. This was the first time where I actually made a living, where I was now the breadwinner in my family. I had just gotten married, and we wanted to grow a family, and we had expenses, and for the first time I was actually able to do that. And the thing is that while I was making this living for myself, I was actually hands-on in the ground. We built miles of water harvesting swales and rain gardens. We planted hundreds and hundreds of fruit trees in that first year. We planted all kinds of habitat systems and built habitat systems. I mean, in that first year, we caught and infiltrated millions of gallons of water from the work we did through the business. So what we accomplished in that first year was, just by the numbers themselves, was more effective than like 2 or 3 years of volunteer activist work. And that just totally blew my mind, because working so hard to get fruit trees in the ground and to put water harvesting systems in for so many years, and then not getting paid, being just barely making it financially. And here I was having a more powerful impact on the land, and I was actually able to provide for my growing family. I also learned a ton, and this is the thing that I think a lot of folks can feel a little can feel the obstacle of what you don't know. And you might be sitting here telling yourself, well, I don't really know how to design a landscape, or I've never built terraces or water harvesting systems, or, there's all the stories that we tell ourselves about what we can't do. And the thing is you don't want to get that paralysis by analysis. The way that I've lived my life, and I encourage you to do this too, is that you take action. You take action, you do it carefully. Apply the principles of permaculture in the process of assessment, of starting slow, starting small, but don't stop, right? Actually start. And you're not going to get anywhere if you don't start. So in the process of building this very first project, I learned how to operate equipment. I learned all kinds of things in the process of doing that. And I did it by hiring mentors onto my project. I paid my mentors really well. They taught me how to do this. And then my company was able to stand behind that work as professionally done. And then myself and my team had got the training to be able to do this on our own later. So it was a really amazing recipe for success. But I made a ton of mistakes as well. And this is the kind of stuff that Neil sort of alluded to before, which is what is the structure of our business? How are we running our business? What are our processes? And this is where we can really fail, and we can fail hard. And so some of the mistakes I made was, first off, I charged my client the same exact I was paying my employee. In my mind, I wasn't thinking about what we would call overhead costs, or external costs that you can't actually charge the client direct, because every project is going to have those. There's things like administrative work, phone calls, emails, staff meetings, equipment, tools, all kinds of things that you need to run a successful company like this. But you can't go charge a client for it. You can't put on the invoice, $300 every 2 weeks to pay for my truck, right? Like, that's not going to fly. And so this first mistake I made was I charged my client the same as I paid my employee. So the client got an amazing deal, and I ended up at the end of the project paying out of pocket for a lot of these unforeseen costs that I just wasn't aware of. So great first lesson. And part of that too was really poor tracking. And tracking is a key part of running a successful company like this, because you need to know where you are in the project at all times. If you wait 2 weeks to make sure that you didn't go over budget on materials, that you didn't go over budget on equipment rentals, that you haven't gone over budget on labor, or to be able to track, where am I in the project? I might have said I was going to do it in 2 weeks, and at week 1, I'm not halfway done. Am I actually going to be able to complete the project in 2 weeks? If you're not tracking things, you're going to get to the end of some of those milestones you set for yourself, like the project is done in 2 weeks, or it's only going to cost $10,000. You're going to hit those milestones, and if you're not on track, well, that's a very uncomfortable conversation to have with a client. So I didn't do any tracking in my first project. I had absolutely no clue where I was at with the budget. I had no clue if I had got the right amount of materials. I had no clue if we were going to complete the project on time. And just by virtue of luck, we had a client who knew she was getting an amazing deal, because we weren't charging her very much. And these issues, didn't sync the client relationship. But it will sync relationships with clients if you're not able to track well. And then estimating, of course, I was terrible at estimating what things were actually going to cost. And again, luckily for this first project, the client got probably $100,000 install for $30,000. So I mean, no complaints for them about what they received. But for myself, it was a learning process to not estimate these things correctly, and that the estimation process itself is one of the most important parts of setting up a project. And I just didn't think about it that way. I was the on the land designer, installer, and I just wanted to get my tools in the ground and start planting stuff. Like, that's all I really wanted to do. So I just put random estimates together, like I had no idea what I was even talking about, and they would get approved, and then we would just go. Luckily we had this great client, but I've had other clients and other projects where we got the estimation wrong and we went over the cost of the project, and the client was not going to pay extra beyond what the agreement was. So who do you think had to pay for that? Yeah, that I had to pay for that, right? That was out of pocket. I mean, can you imagine that you're running a professional company and you do a project, and instead of making money, instead of breaking even, you're actually paying money out of your pocket to make this happen for a client? Like, that's the kind of stuff that can go wrong, and this is why we've built systems, proven systems, to ensure that nothing like that happens again. And I want to teach you all how to do that so you don't have that same experience. And then I had no projected completion of the project. I had no idea how long this was going to take. I had, I don't know, is it going to be a month? Is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be 6 months? I don't even know. I don't even have a plan to, for finishing. I'm just going to keep going until it's done, sort of a thing. And that can be a real problem when you're working with clients, because not every client wants to have a crew on their land for 6 months straight, 5 days a week for 6 months. People like their privacy. People like to know what's happening. And so you want to be able to tell your client up front just how much time it's going to take to get a project done. So a lot of mistakes. I mean, I'm just even scratching the surface of all the mistakes that I've made in my company over the years, but obviously a lot of really amazing learning as well. And when it was all said and done, when this project was over, I had a viable business. I had a name for my company, Permaculture Artisans. I had a crew. I had a bank account for my business. And if you haven't started a bank account, like, let me just give you a pro tip right now. Even if you don't have a business, but you want to start a business, or if you are just at the beginning stages of a business, open a bank account. Come up with a name for your business and open a bank account, even if you haven't begun yet. This can only do positive for you, because now as you start and grow your business, you'll identify there's a whole host of things that you need to buy, like tools, or maybe a computer, maybe equipment, maybe work clothes, who knows what it is, but there's a whole set of expenses that you will have to make in order to grow your business. Well, guess what? If you have a business bank account, then you can write off every single one of those things. So there's no reason not to start there. And the other thing is, you start to grow a reputation even by just having your name out there, people starting to associate you with that. So it's an important place to start, is just come up with a name and open a bank account, and then you're set the groundwork to be successful as you move forward. So now we're moving from my one project, and so about 5 years after that project, I was running a $500,000 company. I had about 6 or 7 employees, and we were doing multiple projects at a time. We had equipment, and we were on a roll, and we were moving forward with our process. And at about year 7, we hit the 7-figure mark, and we've been operating a $1 million company ever since. So we've had a bunch of years now where we've been grossing $1 million a year. Now, here's a couple things to keep in mind about these numbers when I talk about these numbers. Now, first off, I personally made more money when we were at the $500,000 mark than I do now at the 7-figure mark. And the reason why is because over the last few years, because I wanted to grow and scale the company, I wanted to be able to provide more right livelihood opportunities for people where they could restore the land and get paid well. And as part of doing that, I reinvested a lot into the company in order for it to grow. And sometimes you get really, really good people, and in order to keep those people, you have to pay them really well too. So as I started to gather a more and more of a powerful team of staff members, of designers and project managers and administrators and foremen, I started, I had to pay them well in order to keep the really, really good ones. So and now, as of today, we've got a 7-figure contracting company. We have 15 employees. We're humming along, and I'm making a good income, not as much as I was years ago, but I have more time now to develop new endeavors and new projects and companies. So it's a good trade. Now, one of the first things that you have to decide when you're starting your business is what kind of business are you going to have? Because there's a lot of different ways to go about this, especially in the landscape design field, the ecological landscape design field, or permaculture contracting field. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to hire a whole bunch of staff and buy equipment and do all the installations. That's a more advanced level of operating a company, and it can be a bit more stressful, and there's a lot more of those overhead costs in a contracting installation company. You know, a lot more costs around insurance and taxes and equipment and bookkeeping and accounting and office work and all these things that are really not billable to the client. So you have to build that into your estimates and to your hourly fees that you charge clients. So what kind of business is right for you right now? Is it being a consultant? Is it having a design company? Is it doing installation? And then within that, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. As you niche down, are you niching down into the rainwater harvesting market? Are you niching down into homestead design and installation? Are you niching down into school gardens? Are you niching down into getting municipal contracts, working with cities and working with institutions to manage their public landscapes? There's so many different pathways that you can go. The recipe to get there is pretty much the same, but what you want to do first and foremost is align the kind of business that you see for yourself with what you're passionate about. You know, what turns you on, what gets you up in the morning. So what kind of business is right for you? So that's sort of the first question. And then the second question is, well, what services exactly? When I started my company, it was like, we're doing everything. We're going to design food forests, and we're going to do hardscapes, and we're going to do water harvesting systems. We're even going to manage forests. We're going to do sustainable thinning in the forest for fire fuel load reduction. We're going to build architectural elements like trellises and decks and patios. I wanted to do it all. I wanted a team that could do it all. And it probably took about 7 years to get a team that could do all of those things. So think about that, 7 years of a learning curve in order to get there. Hiring mentors and masters onto my projects and having them train my team so that my team would be able to, understand how to build some of these very technical things. And so now I have a team that can do pretty much everything inside the field of permaculture and regenerative agriculture. We can, with the equipment, with, hardscaping, with vegetation, with soil, and we can do everything with water. We could do it all. But it took a long time to get there, and it was complex. You don't have to follow that path. I like to tell people that you can still accomplish everything I'm talking about without actually knowing how to do it all. And you do it by being a really good organizer. The better you are of an organizer, the better you are at building coalitions and building partnerships with other professionals, then you can put a team together for any project. Let's say you have a client and they want to build a pond, a big earthen pond, and you never built an earthen pond before. That doesn't mean you need to say no to the project. You just need to know the people who can build the pond. And then you can frame the project inside an ecological lens so that the pond is connected to backflood swales and that it's used as flood irrigation for an orchard, or from the pattern ecological design level, that's your role. But from the technical level of building particular structures, bring in the masters to do that, but do it within your business. So even if you don't know how to do all these things, if you're a good organizer and you're building relationships with people, then you can actually provide a lot of these services. But within all of this, when we talk about services, maybe you are just doing design, and that's totally fine. My design, the design department at Permaculture Artisans is a 6-figure design department. So even without installation, we're still doing 6 figures just with the design department in of itself. So you can build a successful business without ever actually, getting on an excavator or even putting a shovel in the ground, if that's what's right for you, if that's what is aligned with who you are and where you are in your stage right now. And then once you start to follow this path of deciding what kind of business you want to have and what services you have to provide, then there's this question of, well, who do you serve, right? So you want to know who your market is. Are you going after schools? Are you going after other organizations, other businesses? Are you going after homeowners who have homesteads? Are you, who do you serve in the process of doing this? And then speak their language. You want to be able to communicate appropriately to the kind of communities that you're actually working with. Okay, and then, so then with all of that, then how do you actually get your clientele to grow your business? And there's, this is just like a little diagram here of one way you can do it. And one thing that I do is I've created what I call the social engagement plan. And what that social engagement plan is it's all about, giving something to the community first. So maybe I'll give a design away to a school or to a library, or I'll help organize a volunteer project. And in the process of doing that, I'm building a whole set of relationships, and I'm starting to attract clients to my company that way. And then, on top of that is education. If you want to get clients, one of the most effective possible ways you can do that is to provide some kind of education. And so what I really encourage my students to do is start some kind of demonstration garden, some kind of demonstration product. It doesn't have to be at your place. It could be a friend, a neighbor, a family member in the community somehow. But if you can just get a demonstration project going that you can bring clients to teach them about whatever it is that you're passionate about, that is probably one of the best possible ways that you can attract tons and tons of clients that only want to hire you. They don't even want to hire anybody else. They only want to hire you because they've seen what you can do, they felt your passion, your inspiration, and so they want to come and hire you. And for a few years in my projects, we actually attracted 90% of our clients were clients who actually came through a tour of one of our projects. So we tracked that back, that was where those clients came. So those are just like a couple pro tips about that. Hey, Neil and Raleigh, I need to take a very quick break. So right. Just excuse me for 1 second and I'll be right back.
Cool.
You got it. Oh, I'll take my jacket off. They put me in a cold room. This would be a great salami hanging room. It's at like 45 degrees.
Who put you in a cold room, really?
It was the only one I could use. It was the only one. Oh, man, I just got to bring people's attention towards Michael's one of the member of Ecological Action Team community. He said this is really cool. He says, I'm really feeling your quest, Eric. On December 13th, I had a stroke. At the time, I couldn't take myself to the restroom. I needed assistance. I was lying flat on my back for 2 months. I joined EAT and learned about sustainability and permaculture. Less than a year later, I'm mobile, trying to purchase 142 acres in eastern North Carolina. My left side is slightly impaired, though, but I want to raise food to feed my family, sell the extra food. So like you, never give up. I'm 57 years old. I'm never giving up. Thanks, Eric, for being an inspiration. That's pretty cool. I mean, it just goes to show that you can move beyond burnout, injury, and actually do something to get towards that goal you want. Neil, I'm sure you've got a great story of, perseverance through hardship. What's that?
A great story about burnout?
Oh, or just like, I'm sure you had to deal with like some almost insurmountable what felt like insurmountable challenges out at Albeda.
It's I think whatever you pursue, you're going to hit a slump, right? No matter what you're trying to do, you hit slumps. And so that may be in a relationship, it may be in pursuing a business, it may be working with a boss you don't get along with. Could be anything. I've been very fortunate where I am, actually. I've never felt like I was really in danger. And I'm with a really good community of folks who took me in. But yeah, there's no question that it's also been, right, it's how you bounce back. I think, I love listening to Eric. I really do, because he's very sincere.
Yeah.
And he tells it like it is.
For sure. I don't share this with a lot of people, but I tried. I went on a crazy permaculture adventure without literally no planning. Just like, okay, I'm gonna volunteer my time and try to put on a conference. I lost all my cash basically and had to live in my car for like a month.
Mm.
that sucked, but it was just a lesson. Like, okay, you gotta be smart about before you take the leap into even something that might feel like it's the right path. Like you gotta plan.
Yep,
And I'm glad now
absolutely.
I've learned that. Yeah, Gabriel
Oh,
says about
sorry
hydroponics.
about that.
Oh, don't worry
Yep.
about it. Yeah, we're still live in terms of
All
Michael's
right.
question. But yeah, let's get back to it. Eric, thanks for jumping on back.
Okay, thanks everyone. Please forgive me. All right, so so there's a lot of different ways to get clients, and so I touched on a couple of them. Having an education campaign is probably one of the most effective. Getting out there in the community, building those relationships, another key factor. And as you start to grow your network and your connections and your relationships, then you can get a little more nuanced. I mean, it's going to be hard. I think what most people want to do is they want to make posters and they want to focus on their website, and you definitely want to have a portfolio on a website. I mean, that is key. You want to have some kind of social proof about what the work that you do is and some sort of compelling content. But ultimately, the most effective way to get clients and to get the best clients really comes from that word of mouth. And that's the foundation that you want to build your business on, is the relationships that you create and the projects that you've done out there in the community. And so it's really worth it to put that time into that demonstration landscape or garden or project that you can bring the public to. I really can't emphasize just how key that is. And then you can document that. You can put that in a portfolio. You have that story. And just real quick, I'll tell a story that one of those projects for me was a third of an acre, the first place that my wife and I bought. It was a little suburban area, little suburban project. It was covered in asphalt and compacted gravel. I mean, the thing was a parking lot. And in 2 years, we ripped up all that asphalt and we built an oasis garden there that had over 100 fruit trees. We were infiltrating 400,000 gallons of water a year on a third of an acre. We had thousands of different kinds of plants. We had habitat ponds, rain catchment systems, wood-fired cob ovens, worm bins. It was a co-housing community situation. It was a very robust model. And we toured over 1,000 people at that site over the course of 3 or 4 years. And one year in 2008, I got audited by the IRS because I had claimed 50% of all of my home expenses as part of my accountant's suggestion. I claimed 50% of my expenses because my home was this showcase garden and an important part of my business function. And so the IRS audited us. Well, the crazy thing happened. It was about an 8-month process, and I had to go through 2 different accountants to get one that could do this. But in the end, we were able to make a case for our home garden as a business expense. And I had 6 different clients write letters on my behalf that we turned in as part of the audit, saying that they never would have hired us if they didn't come to our garden. And in the end, the IRS allowed us to write 30% off of all home expenses forever. Like, not even just for that year, but then they were like, all right, well, if we got to do it for that year, then you have to do it every year after that. That's kind of unheard of. It's almost a precedent-setting situation. And it really speaks to the power of how you can use this sort of showcase demonstration project as a way to not only bring in clients, but to build your business, create abundance for yourself, and kind of work the system and work some of those edges. So okay, back here. Okay, so then how do you scale, right? Like, once you start your project, once you start your business, and you start to grow, well, how do you root in deep and scale a company so that you can reach some of those bigger milestones, that you can really make an impact on your economy? You can, hit a 7-figure mark. And this is where I think a lot of us permaculture people and eco-designer people get really tripped up, because here we are, we're systems designers, but we're usually implementing our design skills in the environment, in the ecology, with water and soil and sun and climate and trees, and that's where we're doing a lot of our designing. But I want to encourage all of you to take your design inspiration, to take your design chops, your design experience, to take what you know about the principles of permaculture or biomimicry or systems design and apply that to your business. Apply that to your communication systems. Apply that to your tracking systems. Apply that to your social systems. And as you start to apply the principles of design from the point of view of your business and your community, now you have a recipe to scale, because ultimately it's not about the work we're doing in the physical world that's going to hold us back. I mean, we have the technology and the ability to transform deserts, right? Neil, you know, it's like we could transform deserts into oases. We could do amazing things in the world in the physical realm, but but and I know Neil, I know Neil, you're totally on this, that like the things that hold us back isn't what we can do in the physical world. What holds us back is how we set up these economic systems. It's how we set up the social systems. It's how do people communicate with each other? How does money flow from one place to another? How do we track projects? Who are the decision makers? How do decisions get made? How do you deal with changes that happen in the field? So, you know, this is the place where, as you know, it's like a movement to regenerate the planet. And if we actually want to build regenerative economies, then this is the design challenge, right? Like, this is the place where we need to spend more of our time, is developing processes, social and economic processes that can provide that foundation to grow. So if you want to set up your business for large-scale impact, then you really need to combine these three parts of the world. And this is actually a model for what they call sustainable development, but it works for us here as well. So it's the crossover between the environment, the social, and the economic. And it's that little spot there in the middle. That's where we want to reside. And that's where we want to spend our time and our energy, to be able to build these systems. And when I keep coming back to this word system, and the reason why is because the only way you're going to get to a 7-figure contracting company is by having procedures that are on a pattern level, procedures that aren't always in flux. So you want to build systems, and so it might even be just a weekly meeting with the staff, like that's part of a system. It might be what you use to create an estimate, your estimation template, and how you go about creating that estimate and then delivering it to your client. That's a system. That's a process. What is your follow-up plan with clients? Have a plan. Don't make it random. I mean, as a kind of young permaculture hippie activist guy who, you know, smoked lots of pot in my younger years, like I wouldn't call a client back for maybe even a week. You know, they would call and I was just too lazy, or I had other stuff going on. I didn't prioritize. I didn't call them back. Well, that's not a system that you can scale a business on. You want to have a system where you have that follow-up communication plan. When I send a client a proposal or a design, you know, it's like, first off, the best thing to do is to present these things in person. If you can't present it in person and you send it in an email, and this is what I coach my staff to do, you always follow up that email with a phone call, because we all know how stuff can get lost in translation, especially if it's email or it's virtual communication. So follow that up with a phone call. Get the tone of the voice on there, right? Like dispel the stories that people might make up about a proposal you say, or a design that they don't understand, but now they're trying to understand it without your guidance. This is what I mean by creating systems and setting yourself up to scale, is that's where you need to put your design energy in order to get to this level. Okay, so So there's so much in this process about how to develop these businesses, and as some you probably hear, like I'm extremely passionate about how to develop regenerative businesses, and I think that this is the movement I want to be part of now, is to help people build a career in these kinds of businesses. And so I want to talk to you for a moment about what we've now put together. It's a proven step-by-step system to develop your own regenerative business. And I've been working almost 10 hours a day for the last 2 months straight to get this all together for you. And it's called the Eco Landscape Mastery School. And it's an online program that does a number of things. First off, it's the proven step-by-step system. I mean, it's all the systems that I just discussed about managing staff, about managing clients, about tracking schedules and tracking money and projects and communication. All of that is now a recipe that is totally available to you through this program. So this is 20 years of experience all wrapped up in here. And we do that through 16 different learning modules. So we've broken the course into 16 different learning modules. And then inside each of those modules are tons of different downloads, bonus downloads. And what I mean by that is, like, we give you the design contract template that we use. We give you the estimate template. You get an entire estimate worksheet that's already all dialed for you to be able to quickly put estimates together for clients. I was looking for something like that for years, right? I didn't know what would work, what was good. I tried different things, and wasted a lot of time trying to find something that works. Well, now I'm actually giving that to my students as part of this whole process. And then the course itself, with all the stuff, people who sign up for this course, for the school, they have access forever to all of the downloads and all the learning modules. And then along with it, so you get the course, it's got all the 16 learning modules. There's hours and hours and hours of sessions there that you can watch at your own time, at your own pace. But then along with it is a mastermind community, and every month we're going to bring folks in. Like, I want to bring Raleigh and I want to bring Neil into the class to talk about the different things that they're experts at. So we bring experts in, we have live Q&A, and basically the whole entire point of this school, the whole idea, is that every student creates their own business that they can scale. That's what it is. Not even really a class. I keep going back and forth. Should I call it a school or a course or a class? Because essentially what it is when it's all said and done, you will have a fully functioning ecological design company of your own that matches your context and your passions. So a little bit about the system. We're talking about how to start a regenerative business. We go into everything around design, consultations, installations, all the systems and processes. We build that foundation for ecological design process. Everything about project management. I mean, project management is the glue that makes a project successful. So if you don't get this part right, then your company could essentially unravel, or you could have some really bad experiences on projects, which I've totally had many not so great experiences. I don't actually want you all to have those same experiences. So all the pro tips for project management, and it's all followed up with coaching and mentoring, and then a whole part about how to run your business. So we go into the piece about invoicing, about scheduling your fee schedule, about how and when to take money, how to invoice, what do you do when there's changes, making change orders. I mean, every facet of building an ecological landscape company and running that, all the way from you as a single solo designer to having a 7-figure company with employees. We go through everything that one would need to know about that. So in the mastermind community, monthly live coaching, expert hangouts, and then we want to showcase all of our students. Every month we're going to put a big spotlight on all of our students. What are the successful projects folks are working on, where are they at in their business. And then, of course, we'll have peer-to-peer mentorship and accountability. And then, and this is my first time actually announcing this to the world, we've put together a certificate challenge. So we're actually going to provide a certificate of an ecological landscaper certificate as part of our program. But the thing is this is no cakewalk. This is no PDC. There's 20 milestones that a student would have to accomplish to get their certificate. But the thing is that every one of those milestones is a core part of building your business. So I actually get the chills talking about this because I can see how powerful this can be. So essentially, by the time somebody earns their certificate, they already have all of their business templates in place. They have already experienced doing professional design, doing professional installation. They've got all of their accounting and business systems in place, and their business is fully functioning and running. So this is a serious deal in order to get this certificate. So, Neil and Raleigh are going to provide a link, and the class is open now until November 14th. Enrollment is open, so you guys can check that out. And we do have payment plans available for this program. It's a 6-part payment plan, and then we have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if people aren't happy or whatever, you're not totally locked in if you want to refund in 30 days. So that's what we're offering. That's what's come out of 20 years of doing this work. That's what has come out of seeing how to make an impact in the world. And now what I feel like is my mission is to help people build careers in restoring the land. And if we can make a shift in the economy, I mean, in the United States alone, landscaping is over a $70 billion, that's billion with a B, a $70 billion industry, more than that per year in the United States alone. And so just think about how much resource that is, and what percentage of that is actually ecological, regenerative, what percentage of that is repairing ecosystem processes. Very, very small percent. Most of that is lawns, it's chemical landscaping, it's all that kind of stuff that we're
Hey, Eric, I think we had sound went out temporarily.
He can't hear
in our
us
development.
either.
So
Oh, now we're back on. Sorry, we had the sound go out temporarily, so the sound cut out. Your sound cut out temporarily, so you can just go back like 1 minute.
Like 30 seconds, Eric.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Sorry about that, everybody.
Did you get the part? Did you get the part about the $70 billion landscape industry?
Yeah, we just got to that, and that's pretty incredible. So why don't we start from there?
All right. So what I was saying is that being that there's over $70 billion a year spent on landscaping in the United States, a fraction of that is actually ecological. And everybody has a landscape to maintain, whether you're a renter or you're a landowner, everybody has some kind of landscape. And so if we think about this, just think about how many lawns there are, just in the United States, not let alone the world. How many lawns are there? How many dysfunctional, unuseful landscapes are out there? It just gives you a sense of how big this market is and how ripe we are to transform an entire land use industry, a land use industry almost as big as agriculture in the United States, that we have this opportunity now to do this. And the thing is enough with having to volunteer all of our time to do good in the world, right? Like that is a recipe for burnout. And I still believe that some volunteerism and working in the community is a good thing to do. And I still do it as part of my social engagement plan. But everybody deserves the right livelihood. I mean, I truly believe that. And so if we can all spend our time doing things we love that are providing a benefit for Earth's ecosystems and communities, then I think that is one of the most powerful impacts I can possibly think, and I'm devoting my life to that, and that's what the Eco Landscape Mastery School is all about. So I'm going to stop there and take questions and feedback. And
awesome. That was great.
What's that?
That was
all right.
Man. See, that's a talk I wish I would have heard like right after doing something like a PDC or going to the big permaculture conference for the first time, because it would have just given me so much more perspective. And it's like if you were ready to listen, maybe You would have heard someone who has the wisdom, so you
Yeah.
didn't go down some crazy path. But man, that is so cool. Thanks so much for sharing that, Eric. And just as a quick shout out to everybody, so if
No, my
anyone
pleasure.
is interested and wants to learn more, look at the chat box. We just posted the link to the is it called the Ecological Landscaper Mastery School? Yeah, we just
Yeah,
posted
Eco
the
Landscape
link.
Mastery School or
Eco Lands.
ELM.
Yeah, we posted the link to Elm on the chat box. Yeah, feel free to click on it, check it out. I think it's fantastic. I've met a few of your students, and they're doing some cool stuff.
That's true.
Oh, they're doing awesome.
And I see that I missed a lot of questions
Yeah, but
because I
that's
had my question box happen to be closed. So
all
Yeah, we're
good.
gonna get to
Well,
them right now.
yeah, now it's time for questions, everybody. So if
It's
you ask
question time.
questions a few minutes back, we're going to do that right now. So why don't we start? Let's start back. I think the first question came from Zeth. Zeth, he's in. He says, I don't think I met
let's see.
either
Now
of
I don't
you.
hear anything.
Oh, okay. Try
Test.
turning your. Oh man, technology, can never trust it.
GoToWebinar is being
There you
bad
are.
today.
Being a bingus. Okay, so here's a question from Zeth. He's out in Phoenix. So he says he's trying to start out something on his own. I know Phoenix is crazy. So he says he went to one of your water harvesting classes, came to check it out. He's in the Phoenix area. He says his latest challenge is getting new clients and trying to figure out how to find them. So he's in the land of HOAs, but he's having a hard time just finding clients. What's a strategy for finding new clients?
In the land of homeowners associations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey Zeth. Last time I saw you, you were sitting on top of a 3,000-gallon water tank. I think last time I saw you. So stoked you could join up here today. How cool. Yeah. No, that's a really good question about finding clients, and I guess I would ask first, do you have any kind of model landscape or garden that you can kind of put some energy into and then invite people to? So when you invite people into your space, into something that you've done, that's that would be step number one, and then step number two would be with the homeowners association, it's hard without knowing what all the details are, but just even going into those meetings. And I think often what happens when we talk about these kinds of solutions, and Zeth, I think you know this because we might have talked a little bit about this before, but sometimes it's about how we frame the solutions. And I'll tell you, one of the frames that most people are, is legitimate for most people, and that's money. And so can you, in terms of like what you see, the kind of work that you would want to do, can you frame that in a way where people see that they're going to save money? Either they're going to save money on water, they're going to save money on food, or the other piece that I see is when I'm assessing landscapes, I'm also assessing clients. And if I see that a client is really interested in something, like if I do a consultation for somebody and I go into their home, I really pay attention to the kinds of stuff that they're interested in. Maybe they have some cut flowers on their kitchen table, or maybe they've got a lot of rose paintings around, and then you can kind of frame what you're offering within the context of stuff they really love. Like, hey, did you know you could have a roof water irrigated rose garden? Like, have your rose garden, but have it be ecological at the same time. So there's ways to to convert those potential clients that you do get. But otherwise, I would just say framing services in the sense of not just ecological terms, but financial terms, and then having some kind of demonstration that you can put energy into and use as an educational opportunity.
Can I jump in on that? What you're talking about, Eric, when you're saying, do you have a portfolio you can point to? That's what I call your money swale. It's something you build that's just going to passively collect dollars for you, whether that For me, that was the set of terraces that we have right next to our headquarters. Because when we get people that come and visit and they see these terraces we've built, they're just ridiculously impressive, and everybody loves them, and they're beautiful. And it cost us probably $200,000 to build those, and they've brought in at least $3 million of funding. So it's right. It was expensive to build, and people, it's our money swale, right? It's what we show people to impress them when we're talking about what we do with the land. It's a passive way to collect clients.
Absolutely,
Awesome.
I love that. The money swale. We should have a webinar just titled "The Money Swale" and go full into that.
Okay, here's a question from Michael. Man, Eric, I gotta send this after. Michael is he said he had 1 year before he had a stroke and he literally couldn't move. Like he was just stuck on his back for 2 months. And he started looking at webinars like these, and he said he learned about sustainability, and a year later he's mobile. He's trying to purchase 100 to 40 acres of land. He's saying never give up. And he had a question for you. He says, do you design farms for growing feed for livestock or hemp to make money? Do you have areas to grow livestock, goats, sheep, poultry? He says, I think I want to build farms for beginning farmers like me. Is there a permaculture market for this?
Great question, and my heart goes out to you too, Michael, for just what you've been through, and like, man, how amazing. You just keep going for yourself and for the land. Just all the best to you in that. And yes, absolutely, we consult and design at all those levels. I mean, we have projects that are 500 acres that are fully integrated with rotational grazing, with growing out feed, chickens, and commercial vegetable growing. So we have from that level all the way to like little urban projects. So the full scale, the full scope. And then I think that I actually really appreciate this question, because I think that when people think ecological landscape design, they just think like food forests, patios, and habitat ponds, but that's actually not the case. That within the frame of running a professional ecological design business, we can absolutely be designing large-scale farms, production systems. I mean, and we can also do things that are more community benefit, like I work with schools, I work with cities, I work with nonprofits. So you could pretty much go anywhere with it. And one thing that I found that one issue, two parts to the issue around consulting and designing for farmers. One is that farmers generally don't want to pay you to do installation work because they already have some kind of labor force or process that they can do that work for cheap. So I found that my big farming clients haven't been great install clients, but they've been great consultation and design clients. And that then the other side of it is, if you're looking at an existing farm, retrofit, so an existing farmer who wants to make some changes versus someone who's just starting out, that's a big difference. And what I've found with working with farmers who already have an existing enterprise is that they're much slower to make changes, because they've, hopefully they've got themselves to a where they're making some kind of ends meet off their farm, and then the idea of investing or making changes can be pretty scary for them. So one thing about those clients is those are usually more the really long-term clients that are slow going, a little bit of support each year, small changes that are very carefully planned and designed. But more and more, we're getting these farmers and ranchers hiring us out for consultation, because especially, well, here in California, we had the drought, and we're still in that drought. And so as part of the drought, forage totally dried up. And with the forage drying up, all of a sudden ranchers are buying feed at the thousands and thousands of dollars per month for a more extended period of time than they ever have before. And then, of course, they're looking at their water sources and how they manage surface water. So, it sort of took crises to turn on a bunch of ranchers and farmers to say, oh man, we need to figure out a way to manage our water, because that actually is the money that, the water is the source that's ensuring our forage quality and, our ability to feed our animal operation. And so anywhere where, again, the framing comes back to, well, how can you save your client money, especially in the context of farmers? That's really what the conversation has to be within the context of ecological solutions. But I'm always very sensitive to the low budget that farmers have.
I totally imagine. Okay, so here's another question for you, Eric. He says, this is from Enrique. He says, Eric, how do I start up? I incorporated this year and have my C27 test next month. I feel scared to launch in 2018 and operate at a loss until I build a clientele portfolio. I feel safer to get a job with an established landscape contractor for at least another year. I have expenses plus bills that I can't afford to default on. What do you recommend? Good question.
Well, hey, Enrique. Good to see you here, brother. And yeah, dude, I feel you. First off, you're gonna totally ace that test. So, I can see you with your C27 license here in a month, and this edge that you're at right now, we're launching your company and all the risk that's involved.
It's terrifying.
The one thing I want to say is that it's terrifying no matter at what point. Like, if you don't do it now, it's still going to feel the same way a year from now. And it's still going to, like, whenever you're ready to do it, all this fear around it is going to be there no matter what you've done up to that point. So, and I know that you've worked with other established landscape contractors before, and you probably experienced that safety before, because I know your story a bit. But here's the thing that I recommend is try to find that first big client. Like, it might feel safe to get to work with others if you have to, obviously, to cover your bills. Do what you have to do that. But I think it's going to feel the same when you launch, like, no matter where you're at. And for the first few years of my company, it was from project to project, and I even had moments, not to add more fear into the mix, but I had moments where one project was ending and I didn't have the next project. And I remember this one time I was sitting in the parking lot of a landscape materials company where they sell, like, composts and mulch and rocks and stuff, and I was sitting there feeling that we were about a week out in finishing the project we were on, and I didn't have another project. And I just sat there just kind of in terror, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Okay. And, like, in that moment, and I don't know, I don't mean to get spiritual on you all, but in that moment I got a phone call, and it was an old client that wanted to hire me back out immediately for the next project. And it just seemed like in those first few years, like, that was the way it was. It was just you're living on a knife's edge, and until you get that clientele and that portfolio and that demonstration garden to really build your foundation, it's a little bit of the way it works. I know that's not a great answer, but one thing that you can do to convert clients better is if you get some good bites on what might be a potential project. And you may have already done this before, Enrique, but if you get a bite on a good project, you could start by kind of coaching them without charging a lot. Like, at my company, we charge for consultations. So if someone hires us for a consultation, it's $100 an hour. But if it's a project that I know could be really big and a huge milestone for us, and I really want, then I'll actually just do the consultation for free, and I'll really show up for that client. I'll send them a report. I'll put the energy in, not in a salesy way, not in a desperate way, but I'm going to provide you really, really high quality and an amazing service sort of approach. And that has tended to serve me well to be able to convert some big projects, because ultimately, if you can get on a project where you have work for a month or two or longer, then hopefully you'll be able to get that next client while you're working on that project. And it's just kind of a daisy chain process until you scale. So, but I really feel for you in where you're at in that spot, and there's no real easy answer except take action and go for it.
Eric, we're gonna unmute one of our guests who wants to say something.
Yeah, let's try this out. All right, Michael, we're gonna unmute you. Okay.
Michael is unmuted. I don't think we can get his camera turned on though, can we?
We might be able to. I have to switch him to a panelist. So.
Hey, boo.
Okay. Hello. We can hear you, Michael.
Okay, I was just calling my girl to tell her, hey, because she's just coming into permaculture and sustainability. But Eric, I just want to say thank you so much for the time that you've given out of your busy schedule to help us as EAT members. And I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody. And just want to say thank you, man. You can't necessarily see my camera's not on. I don't think. No, it's not. Okay, but I just want to say thank you. And I was working with Dr. Wayne. Oh, hey, it's coming on.
Oh,
here I am.
There you go.
And I've been working with Dr. Wayne to learn how to do something just like what you're
getting most of you, but some of.
Can you hear me?
A little fuzzy.
I can hear you. You're coming in and out, but I'm hearing your gratitude, man.
Okay. Am I doing? How am I losing? Okay. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much, and nothing wrong with being a little spiritual, because I know I am, and because if it wasn't for my faith in God, I wouldn't be where I am now. A year ago, I was on my back, not even able to go ahead and use the restroom on my own. But now, I'm going to be a permaculturist because hopefully Mr. Ohlsen taught me how to do it. Now I'm in Eastern North Carolina, in Elizabeth City, right on the coast. The 142 acres that we talked about earlier in my question, I'd say approximately 130 of it is wetland. But I'm going to use the 2 acres that is upland, grow as much as I can, and learn how to turn the wetland into something profitable for myself and my family. Mainly I'm thinking about something on the lines of rice, maybe sugarcane. You tell me. And also on the acreage, I have 2 ponds. One is 4.5 acres, the other one is 11.7. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I don't have the money right this moment, but I'm going to take your course. I've already said it. The spirit is in me, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, and
Thank you, Michael. That's powerful.
Seriously, man. This is what it's all about right here, making this connection and supporting you in your journey and where you're at. And I'm here for you, man. And what an amazing opportunity that you have now with this access to this land. And you're already thinking about it the right way. You're already identifying the beginning step, the beginning place, right? Start with the upland 2 acres, dive into that first, and then take time to observe the wetland. I mean, walk down there, or, move through that area, learn and understand, how does that system work, see it in the different seasons, and it's going to tell you a lot. It's going to teach you a lot about how water and soil and drainage and stuff. And then, I mean, I have a little farm. I've got a 5-acre farm that's in a wetland, so it's a little tiny thing. But even there, with the high water table, it's gold, man. You have resource. You have water. So you've got water, man. Celebrate that. And don't be as scared of that wetland, because you're going to find the right recipe that's going to really serve you as you serve the land. and you've got your heart and your soul right where you need to be successful. So, and we've got your back, man. So
thank you so much. Thank you guys, and
thank you, Michael. We're glad to have you on.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm so glad to meet Jerry and everybody else.
To meet you. Stay in touch, okay?
I
Let us
will.
know how it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. We should do that more often.
Amazing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay,
Wow.
so, oh man, a lot of great questions from folks. So this is from Gabriel, who says, you mentioned you're interested in developing an economic system around regeneration. With that in mind, do you track the results from the work you undertake, like water saving, soil improvement, biodiversity, carbon? This could be interesting. It was fascinating to hear about the better survival rates after the wildfires.
Yeah, some projects we can track and some we can't. It depends a lot on the clients. And actually, one of the things we're doing right now, it's in response to the wildfires, which is part of an answer to your question, is that we're creating now a whole team of scientists and trying to get some laboratories on board to create a full documented process to mitigate and manage runoff after these fires, and then test the soil before, and you're going to implement mycoremediation and phytoremediation to see what kinds of toxins and heavy metals we can accumulate. So we're actually implementing now. People are just flooding in, like resources and schools and universities. Like it's mushrooming, literally mushrooming out pretty huge right now to develop the processes that will allow us to do this post-fire. So that's really awesome. And depending on who our clients are, we've had the opportunity to document some of those successes. Generally, though, when you're working with private property owners, there's all different kinds of people that you work with, right? And so sometimes when the project is over, they want to maintain that relationship, they want you back, and you're able to have that opportunity to document and track. And sometimes the client's like, okay, we're done, like, thank you for the great landscape, and now you don't ever hear from them again. So it just kind of depends. And the other piece is on a cost piece. What I'm trying to do is incorporate more of that monitoring through our maintenance program, because then we've got our team out there, once a week or every month, and we can actually do that kind of documentation. But when it comes back to the overhead cost bit and like trying to manage all the money side of this, that's a challenge to think about how to set up that monitoring and who pays for that and the equipment and all of that. So I love that question also, where you're pushing us to be able to track some of this a bit better.
All right, cool question. So here's from Carl. Carl says, how do you feel about outdoor demonstrations of your completed projects to help generate new customers?
Absolutely. That, for sure, 100%. It's the number one, my number one recommended way to get clients is to have that outdoor demonstration. Like there's nothing that can compare to that. Especially if you make it free to take a tour or have a little introduction or something like that. And in all my experience, that is the number one marketing tactic that I could suggest to you. So yeah, I mean, go for it. It's worth the investment. But here's the thing: if you remember the story about when I was audited by the IRS, so don't get yourself audited, but track all that investment. And if you have an accountant that can coach you, try to do that. Try to build that demonstration now and organize it in such a way that it's a business expense. Get as much of the business write-off as possible, because then that just saves you money. You're not paying all that tax on the money that you spend in order to develop that demonstration garden. It's not money that comes out of your pocket. It's coming out of your business, and it becomes a write-off, and that helps balance out your taxes. So there's a whole bunch of strategic accounting that you need to do to save yourself from paying thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes. And it's all above board. I'm not talking about anything illegal. This is all totally legal stuff. It's just that most of us, when we're just starting out, we don't know that process of tracking write-offs. So it's an important part of the strategy. and your showcase garden can totally be part of that. So it can be a business investment on multiple fronts.
I think I just got an idea for the Sustainable Design Masterclass front yard garden. It's going to be awesome. That's super crucial.
Where do we have a yard?
I've got like about.
Have you got a section of?
I've got a backyard and like a 300-foot front yard, but I'm gonna grow a sea of collard greens and kale. It's gonna be great.
There you go. Actually,
Okay.
when we should buy our first boat. We can buy our boat and write it off, and then start our farm.
The kelp farm. Yeah, oh my gosh, the kelp farm. We gotta do that. All right. So
I mean, this whole write-off thing. I literally just got back from a 2-day retreat where I was finishing, where I was spent the whole time working on this Eco Landscape Mastery School, and so like that was all a write-off. Like I had to stay in a hotel, and it was like on the coast, and poor me, I'm feeling really sad about it. But it was all a business write-off to be able to work 14 hours a day and not have the family and and so there's a lot of ways to work that edge.
Yeah.
I think we can go for 10 more minutes, and then we're going to cut the recording. All right, so let's take 3 or 4 more questions, and then we will cut the recording, and then we'll have our super secret post-recording hangout only for people who attend live, and then we'll call it good.
All right, sounds good. I don't think we probably don't even need 10 minutes. We only have a few more questions.
All right.
So here's one from Josh. It was another one. He says, do you use CRM, project management software like Asana or Smartsheet, team communication apps, etc.?
Yeah, we do. We're currently using Trello, but we want to move to Asana. We also have, because of the scale of our company now, we've moved on from like Excel spreadsheets for our estimation. So we have a software called LMN, which speaks, where we can develop our estimates. It provides tracking, and then it actually pushes data to QuickBooks, which is our accounting software, our bookkeeping software. But up until we were at $500,000 gross, we didn't need to have. There's like a couple $1,000s for that software. We didn't need to have that software up until we really kind of started scaling, and then we were having tons of different estimates, and actually have hired somebody who that's all they do is estimates. Like it's a full-time job just to get estimates out the door. So, but simple having Trello or Asana, or there's a whole bunch of them. Like there's some others I can't remember right now. Absolutely, super easy, totally affordable, and you can keep everything tracked remotely. I work from home now, so I'm hardly ever in the office, but I can keep track of all the projects by jumping into our tracking system. Yeah.
Beauty.
Awesome. I think that's it in terms of questions right now. All right, fantastic.
All right,
Cool.
I'll close
Great.
this out. I think I've got a bit of a lag here, but
Okay, let me put the Sustainable Design Masterclass up real quick so everybody can see it if they haven't
there
before.
we go. All right, for
Boom.
those of you who are here with us live still, thank you so much for coming. We love interacting with you. That moment with Michael was actually pretty magical. I love that.
That's super special.
But thank you, Michael, for wanting to jump on and express your gratitude. For any of you interested in pursuing this further with Erik, take a good look at say the name, Erik.
The Eco Landscape Mastery School.
Eco Landscape Mastery School. That's almost as much of a mouthful as Sustainable Design Masterclass.
Just call it the Elm School.
I like Elm. That's good.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of online programs coming out for people who are kind of in our industry. All sorts of stuff from like large land design to just general business coaching to personal coaching. But no one's got what Erik's got in this space. And so if you are looking at landscape as a potential career, this is the guy to do it with. not Raleigh, the one next over. So take a look at that. Thanks so much. We are going to be sending this webinar out live to our whole email list. You should get that within a couple days. And then our next webinar is on November 2nd with Rebecca Burgess from
Fiber Shed.
Fiber Shed, there we go.
Yeah.
From Fiber Shed. She's going to tell us how she put together a deal involving multiple wool producers in California and North Face, which is a huge multi-billion-dollar apparel company. She's leveraging the sort of things that we ought to be doing if we want to see permaculture and sustainable design grow. So I'm really excited to have her on. Stay tuned for that. We did have a thing with Joel Salatin set up, but his internet is terrible. So we're not going to be able to do it. He's like, he wanted to do a phone call, and we were like, no, you have to come and people see your face and ask you questions, and you give a presentation. But anyhow, thanks so much to all of you, and keep in touch. We love getting emails from you. We love hearing your feedback and what you want to hear about. So take care and have a great week.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Okay, officially cutting the recording.